During the holidays, two plants that we think about a lot are pines and hollies. But take a look at our pine trees. These loblollies behind me are really looking sad. We've invited different horticulturists from the hort department staff to come out and look at them, and plant pathologists as well, and their assessment along with ours is this. They were healthy loblollies when the studio gardens were put in 10 years ago, but what did we do? We came in and we landscaped under them, put in some shade beds of different plants, put in an irrigation system, and then invited everybody to come out to the studio gardens. Well, continuing irrigation along with thousands of feet tromping under these pines has compacted the soil, and it's left it a very wet, compacted soil, and the root systems of these loblollies have really not taken it. And it's unusual because loblolly, of all the pines, is among the most tolerant of wet soils. In fact, it's native to McCurtain County in far southeast Oklahoma, and you have a lot of moisture down there. But you can't couple that with heavy compaction and expect them to thrive. And as comparison, out across the road from our studio gardens is another line of loblolly pines that are deep green, they have glossy foliage, they're very healthy. Well, they've not had thousands of people walking under them. So this is kind of a lesson to us that if you're going to plant pines around your property, put them in a place where they're going to have good aeration, good soil drainage so that they can thrive. As for these, we know that their days are numbered. We're looking at the possibility of having to take them out sometime in the next year, and frankly, we're really not sure what we're going to do with them right now. But I did want to give you some tips on pines in general. If you're buying a live tree for the holidays, whether it's an Austrian pine or Japanese black, keep in mind that those two are among the most susceptible for pinewood nematode when they get 15 to 16 years old. You can enjoy them for the first 8 to 10 to 12 years though as a nice screening in your landscape. But if you're looking for long-term screening, you may want to consider something different such as white pine or possibly some of the junipers as a background hedge in your landscape. And keep in mind that some of these pines just happen to be fairly short-lived here in Oklahoma. Well, as we leave pines, let's think about hollies for the holidays. I've got some nice ones to show you on the other side of the studio garden. Well, nothing reminds us more of Christmas than holly bushes and trees, and I want to go over a few of those that you might want to put into your landscape this time of year. Right here we have Nellie R. Stevens holly, and this is considered a classic holly for American landscapes. It's a cross between Chinese and English hollies, and it has the best characteristics of both. It has the bright red berries of English hollies, but it has the pointy leaves of Chinese hollies and the drought tolerance that they have that makes them a very tough contender in the landscape for screening and blocking effects. Now, on hollies in general, the thing you want to keep in mind is that they like a very moist, acid soil. That's why in the mid-Atlantic states of the U.S. you'll find them out in the wild thriving in swampy areas. But what we've done here in the studio garden is to pile them high with a lot of woody mulch. They also have an irrigation system to help keep them moist. Now, if you plant hollies around the foundation of your home, keep in mind that that's a very dry area usually, especially if it's under eaves where it doesn't get very much water. In addition, usually the soil right next to a foundation is quite alkaline, especially if it's a concrete foundation and there's any of that residue left over. So you may want to consider that when planting them and have the pH checked and adjusted accordingly. Now let's talk about one holly that's native to Oklahoma, and that's the deciduous holly or Possumhaw. If you drive along southeastern Oklahoma this time of year, you'll see them along the road. Now please don't stop and dig those up and take them home because they belong there. That is a native plant, but it's a great one for our landscapes here. Although it has no foliage right now, those bright red berries are wonderful. The ones in nature will range from scarlet orange to deep red. There's a cultivar that you could get at most nurseries called Warren's Red, which is a deep scarlet. Very tough landscape plant. Now, if you want the deciduous holly look of bright berries and a shrubby appearance and a twiggy or thin barked appearance down below, you might want to consider Yaupon holly. Now, the dwarf Yaupons are usually used for hedge effects and aren't really grown for their berries. But the ones that are used as specimen trees are beautiful because the berries are a deep translucent red. Keep in mind, though, that as with all hollies, to get berries on any of them, you need to have a male nearby. Those with berries are only females. And I know that from experience because in our backyard we have a gorgeous American holly, but it's a male. So I know I'm doing my good chore for the other gardeners. because my tree is providing pollen for them to have berries in neighboring yards. Now, the American holly itself is a tall, stately holly, wonderful for screening effect and very long-lived. One other holly I want to mention is the Foster's holly. Now, we planted a small Foster's holly in our bed where we're going to be doing some cutting for bouquets later this spring. And I think you'll find that it's an outstanding holly for use in the landscape when you want to have small foliage. It's very good for floral designs because the leaves are small and have that classic holly shape. Well, I hope you'll consider planting some hollies in your landscapes. There are many others that we just don't have time to mention, but they are an excellent tree for Oklahoma landscapes. And speaking of choosing trees and shrubs for landscapes, I just had this mailed to us in the Oklahoma Gardening mailbox last week, and it's from the Stillwater Tree Board. And this is something that your community may wish to do. The Tree Board in Stillwater applied for an urban forestry grant through the Oklahoma Department of Agriculture's Forestry Services. And using that grant, they did an inventory of the types of trees that grow in the Stillwater area. Then they made a list of the trees that are best suited for growing here and urged people to avoid planting things that were overplanted, such as pin oaks. They even went a step further than that. They have a list here of trees that they recommend. They give the addresses for them and certain comments on them. And then last of all, one very enthusiastic member of the tree board named Bob Bollinger went around Stillwater and actually mapped out where homeowners can drive along or walk along and see these trees in place in public places. This is something that we would urge you in other communities in Oklahoma to do, to encourage people to plant trees that will provide diversity in the landscape and things that you know will thrive in your part of the state.
We hope you enjoyed this video. It's part of our OK Gardening Classics YouTube channel. You can also find more recent videos on our Oklahoma Gardening YouTube channel. And join us on social media for great gardening tips, photos, and discussion.